She covered her sister's shift as a maid, and ended up meeting the CEO's single dad who needed her most. The afternoon sun spilled golden light through the tall glass windows of the hotel lobby, glimmering off polished marble floors. Emma adjusted the crisp maid's apron around her waist, her fingers trembling slightly. She wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't her job, not her world. Her older sister, Sophia, had called her in desperation that morning. Fever had left her weak and bedridden, but she couldn't afford to lose the shift. Emma, out of love and loyalty, had promised to step in just for the day. Now, pushing the heavy cart of cleaning supplies down a corridor lined with plush carpets, Emma felt like an imposter in someone else's shoes. She whispered to herself, "Just change the sheets, tidy the room, and leave. No one will notice," but her heart beat faster with each door she passed, her nerves tightening at the thought of making a mistake. Finally, she stopped in front of a suite reserved for the hotel's wealthiest guests. Sliding the keycard nervously, she entered. The air inside smelled faintly of cologne and leather. The room itself was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city skyline, the marble bathroom gleamed, and a sleek black piano sat quietly in the corner. Emma froze for a moment, drinking it all in. She had never seen such luxury up close. Her world was small: college classes, a part-time cafe job, and evenings spent reading in a tiny apartment. This suite felt like stepping into a dream she didn't belong to. She ran her hand lightly over the smooth fabric of the curtains and whispered, "People actually live like this." A small smile tugged at her lips, but it quickly faded. She wasn't here to dream, she was here to work. Emma moved toward the bed, carefully smoothing out the sheets when the sound of a key clicking in the door made her jump. Her heart pounded. Guests weren't supposed to return while maids were inside. She turned quickly, bracing for a sharp reprimand. The door opened, and in stepped a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a sharp jaw and eyes that carried both exhaustion and authority. His suit was tailored perfectly, yet something about his posture revealed heaviness, as though success came with chains rather than wings. Emma instantly recognized him. Daniel Walker, CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the country. She had seen his face on magazine covers, headlines, and even in the university business classes she'd attended. And here she was, standing in his room with a maid's apron tied awkwardly around her waist. She swallowed hard, expecting him to be angry or dismissive. But then, a small boy peeked out from behind his father's legs. His hair was tousled, his cheeks round, and in his tiny hands, he clutched a worn stuffed bunny. His big brown eyes looked directly at Emma with a mix of curiosity and longing. Before Daniel could speak, the boy tugged on his father's sleeve and whispered, loud enough for Emma to hear, "Daddy, she looks like Mama." Emma's breath caught. Her eyes flickered to Daniel, whose face shifted from guarded weariness to a flash of pain. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and tender. Emma felt the weight of his grief, though she knew nothing of his story. She wanted to speak, to say something polite, but her voice faltered. Instead, she lowered her gaze, fumbling with the sheets as though folding them would erase her presence. But Daniel surprised her. He didn't scold or demand. Instead, his expression softened, and his voice, deep yet tired, carried a quiet gentleness. "You're not who usually comes here," he said, studying her with curious eyes. Emma's lips parted, but words wouldn't come. She couldn't tell him the truth, not yet, that she was only covering for her sister. All she managed was a nervous nod. The little boy, however, didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, smiling shyly. "Hi, I'm Oliver. What's your name?" Emma crouched slightly, her nervousness melting under the child's innocent gaze. "Emma," she whispered, offering a small smile. Oliver clutched his bunny tighter and grinned. "I like you." Daniel looked at his son in surprise. It had been months since Oliver had spoken so freely, so warmly, to anyone outside the family. And now, here he was, smiling at a stranger, a maid who wasn't even supposed to be there. In that moment, something shifted in the air. Emma, who had only come to help her sister, unknowingly stepped into the lives of a grieving father and his lonely son. None of them realized it yet, but destiny had quietly opened a new door. The next morning, Emma told herself it would only be for one more day. Sophia was still recovering, and Emma couldn't bear the thought of her sister losing her job. She tied the apron again, her heart a little steadier than before, though the memory of yesterday's encounter still lingered. The way Oliver's eyes had softened when he looked at her, the way Daniel hadn't sent her away immediately, it played over and over in her mind. When she stepped into the suite, the room was quiet at first. But within seconds, she heard the sound of small feet padding across the carpet. "Emma," Oliver cried, running toward her with his bunny in hand. His joy startled her. Children had a way of showing affection so freely, without hesitation, without calculation. Emma bent down, smiling despite her nerves. "Good morning, Oliver. Will you read to me today?" he asked, holding up a brightly colored picture book. His eyes sparkled, wide with hope. Emma hesitated. She wasn't trained to do this. Maids weren't meant to entertain guests' children. But how could she say no? She glanced around the room nervously, then lowered herself onto the couch. Oliver scrambled up beside her, already flipping open the first page. Her voice trembled at first, but soon softened into rhythm, flowing through the words with warmth. Oliver leaned against her shoulder, giggling at the silly parts, asking questions about the pictures. Emma's heart swelled unexpectedly. She wasn't just reading, she was giving him something he had been missing: attention, care, presence. She didn't notice Daniel standing in the doorway until the story ended. His tall frame leaned against the doorframe, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he simply watched them. Emma's cheeks flushed when she realized he was there. She quickly closed the book, setting it down on the coffee table as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. I should get back to work," she stammered, reaching for the cleaning cart. But Daniel's voice stopped her. "Don't," he said softly. "You don't have to rush." Emma looked up, surprised. There was no anger in his tone, only something heavy, something vulnerable. His eyes weren't the cold, commanding eyes of a CEO she'd read about in magazines. They were the eyes of a man carrying too much loss, too much loneliness. "You're different," Daniel said quietly, after a pause. "Most people, they do their job and leave. But you," his gaze flicked to Oliver, who was still smiling, still leaning close to Emma. "You make him laugh." "I haven't heard that sound in a long time." Emma's chest tightened. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this role, not in this place. Yet Oliver's little hand slipped into hers as if to say, "Don't leave me." She forced a small smile. "He's a wonderful boy," she said, her voice gentle. "He just needs someone to listen." Daniel's jaw tensed, as though her words had touched a wound too raw. He nodded once, slowly. "Thank you," he murmured, almost to himself. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Emma tidied the suite, but her attention kept drifting back to Oliver, who followed her around, asking endless questions, about the world, about her, about things only a child would think to ask. She answered each one patiently, her laughter echoing through the room more than once. By evening, when it was time for her to leave, Oliver clung to her hand. "Promise you'll come back tomorrow," he whispered, eyes wide with fear that she would disappear. Emma hesitated, her heart aching. She wanted to say no, to remind herself this was only temporary. But looking into his hopeful little face, she couldn't. "I'll be here," she said softly. Behind him, Daniel stood silent, watching her. His expression was hard to read, part gratitude, part hesitation, part something deeper he wasn't ready to show. But one thing was clear: in just 2 days, Emma had become more than a maid in their lives. She had become a light they didn't know they needed. By the 3rd week, Emma knew the truth couldn't stay hidden any longer. Sophia was healthy again, ready to return to her shifts, but Emma's heart grew heavier with each day she delayed. What began as an act of kindness for her sister had turned into something she hadn't expected, something she couldn't explain. Oliver had grown attached to her, and, if she was honest, she had grown attached too. That evening, as she finished folding the last of the fresh sheets, Oliver clutched her arm. His little voice trembled. "Emma, you're not leaving, are you?" Her chest ached. She knelt to meet his eyes, brushing his hair softly. "Sweetheart, I wasn't really supposed to be here. I was just helping for a little while." Tears welled in Oliver's eyes instantly, his grip tightening on her hand. "But, you make Daddy smile again. You make me smile. Please, don't go." His voice cracked with a pain far too big for a child to carry. Before Emma could respond, the suite door opened. Daniel entered, his tie loosened, his expression weary from another long day. He paused at the sight of his son's tearful face and Emma's conflicted one. His eyes narrowed slightly, searching. "What's going on?" Emma's throat tightened. This was it, no more hiding. She stood slowly, her hands trembling. "Mr. Walker, I owe you the truth. I'm not really a maid here. My sister is. She was sick, and I only came to cover her shift. I thought it would just be for a day, but then, she glanced at Oliver, who was still holding her hand. Then it became more than that. The silence stretched heavy between them. Emma's heart raced, bracing for anger, disappointment, maybe even the demand that she leave at once. But when she dared to meet Daniel's gaze, she didn't see fury. Instead, she saw something unexpected, understanding. He exhaled slowly, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "So it's true," he murmured. His eyes flicked to Oliver, who clung tighter to Emma's side. "And yet, I can't be angry. Because in these weeks, I've seen my son laugh again. I've seen life return to this home." His gaze steadied on her, heavy with meaning. "Maybe you weren't meant to be here as a maid. Maybe you were meant to be here for us." Emma's lips parted, her eyes stinging with tears she had been holding back. She didn't know what to say. She had walked into this suite as a stranger, but somehow she had become part of something fragile, something healing. Oliver's voice broke the silence, small but powerful. "Stay, Emma, please. Not just today. Stay forever." Daniel's hand rested gently on his son's shoulder, his eyes never leaving hers. And in that moment, Emma felt it, the quiet miracle of finding a place where she truly belonged. Not by chance, but by fate.